Hello, dear friends. Last time we discussed the question of the path of suffering, and in this regard, some listeners have additional questions. So, I will run through it additionally because a number of people have started to be interested in this topic. I have already mentioned that the whole path of human development is divided into several stages. And the first stage, when a person develops at the level of personality, is called the path of suffering. And it is this question that worries many people very much, including the circle of samsara. When a person can break out of this circle. But we discussed this a little bit at our last lesson. Today I will draw attention to another important point. Namely, all people belonging to this category, who go through the path of suffering, can be divided into several parts, at least into three parts. And the first part of people in life behaves in this way. Remember the character Carlson who lives on the roof, who said, "I am the sickest person in the world, how bad I feel." And some add to this that, "Oh, what difficult situations I have, how painful it is for me to go through these situations." And this category is also divided into two subcategories. One category is more inclined to blame itself. And it turns out that this state of panic, this state of apathy, or this state of self-destruction, or self-eating. And if a difficult situation happens to them, they behave like that they are the sickest people, or that they have the most difficult situation, or how bad they are, how unlucky they are in life, and this self-eating begins. And others, on the contrary, behave, "Oh, how difficult it is for me, how bad it is for me, what situations." And if it concerns health, then doctors are to blame, healers are to blame, and psychologists are to blame. They say, "They can't help, they don't work well with me, they don't help me in any way. In the new situations, everyone is bad again and doesn't understand me. They ignore me or they drive me out of myself. No one considers me, and aggression against other people begins to arise." In both cases, of course, nothing good happens. I have mentioned before that, in fact, a person doesn't develop independently, doesn't walk by himself. He walks under supervision, and therefore the higher powers constantly monitor the person and direct him exactly to a place where a person can learn something, gain some skills, abilities, experience. And as we have said, all this is subsequently transformed into certain qualities that begins to distinguish one person from another person. Therefore, in any case, the situation is the same for all people. And most importantly, it all depends on the personal reactions of each person. One will consider, for example, how bad it is for him. Everything is very bad in life. He doesn't do everything the way he would like. And the result is despondency or aggression, as I have already said today. Another category, they have a different type of reaction to these situations. They are more business people, more responsible people. And they think, well, what is the big deal here? Well, yes, such a situation happened. It is necessary to solve the situation somehow. We need to think about how to go through it more correctly. And they start coming up with some options. Here I can remind you of what happened during the time of the Toltec tribes. Memory was highly valued among these tribes, and as a rule, priests, shamans, or the tribal leader had a greater memory. And so, if there was a situation in the tribe, a person went to ask the leader or shaman, what should he do in this situation? If they couldn't remember a similar case that had already been in the tribe, then they advised to do something. And then, based on the further events, it will be necessary to make further decisions. So, this is the second category of people. They just don't panic. They try to think. The situation may be difficult, but everything happens in life. Therefore, we still need to decide how to approach this situation and what to do in order for everything to somehow get off the ground. Or try to do something more competently. It didn't work out right way, so you need to try another option. And the next category of people, they are already more advanced. These are the people who are already on the self-conscious path of development. They already understand that every person is trained, and first of all, it is necessary in order to develop the necessary set of qualities. We have said that the main task of each person is to master a standard set of qualities at the expense of a standard set of situations. And now, knowing this law of development, this law of evolution, such aspiring people cannot be called in any other way, because they consciously strive to climb the steps of evolution. So they specifically begin to ask themselves the question, yes, the situation is like this, so they are testing me. And first of all, I need to think, what quality is required of me to show in this situation? If a person pays attention to this, then yes, for him this is a chance to rise to a new stage of his development. And the most important thing is to correctly apply the quality that is necessary in this situation, and which will help to cope with this situation in a normal way. For example, if everything worked out, then he really goes to the next stage of development. If it failed the first time, then, so something failed. I have to think, maybe I haven't shown those qualities yet. Therefore, a person, instead of panicking or being upset because something didn't work out for him again, he tries to go through a similar situation but more competently. You can even see such a thing in your life, that a similar circle of some situations happens. And therefore it is a similar circle of situations, so that a person is trained to do the right thing in a such situation. And when a person already understands this, he knows that if he didn't cope in one situation, there will definitely be a repeat situation. And if it repeated, it means something wasn't quite taken into account in the previous situation. And therefore, a person begins to consciously form himself, consciously form his reactions to these situations. Let me remind you, the situations themselves are neither bad nor good. These are just situations. But specifically, a person's reaction to these situations personally paints the situations in some color. And in the beginning, it is a purely emotional color, because it is a purely emotional reaction, and then gradually an intellectual response to what is happening in life begins to form. This is how a person gradually stops making choices in his life with his eyes closed, and opening his eyes begin to gradually turn into the creator of his own life, the master of his own life. They learn to manage their reactions, their emotions, learn to properly direct their thinking processes. And then such people build good successes in their further development. And this really takes them to the next stage of their emotional development. This is certainly good if you take this into account in your life, and do not be like the first ones who say, "Oh, how bad I feel. I'm the sickest person in the world." Still, you need to understand that life teaches you a lot. It primarily teaches you situations, which is why I usually say at lectures, go ahead, voluntarily, and with a song, and then everything will work out. Therefore, success to you on your way.